And he said to me, my sister wants to get married to this individual. She wants to marry him. And the last I knew of this individual, he was a lazy, unmotivated individual. I don't have a good recollection of him. So what tests can you recommend me that I can use to test his competency for my sister? So I found this to be an interesting question, and we can take it one step further. Let's imagine, for example, that your sister's found someone, she wants to marry him, and this guy used to be a drug dealer. Or I don't know, he had a bad reputation of some sort. Okay, he's got some type of negative reputation attached to his name. But your sister wants to marry him. How do you deal with this situation? Okay, firstly and foremostly, you need to understand the following. You don't have the leverage, particularly in this country. Let's say your sister has found someone, she wants to marry him, and he's a bad catch. Like he's whatever you think of as like a bad person, criminal, whatever it is, that's him. You as a brother, you as a father have very little leverage living in this country. Very little. This is the first point. The second point is this. Some of the historians in their commentary on Romeo and Juliet, even though Romeo and Juliet is a fictional play that Shakespeare made, it's not real. But in their commentary on this play, they have asserted, they have suggested that much of the reason as to why the passion between Romeo and Juliet was so inflamed is precisely because the families didn't want them to be together. I'll say it one more time. Much of the reason as to why Romeo and Juliet had such intense passion for each other to the point where they both committed suicide with each other was precisely because their families didn't want them to be together. What am I saying? Okay, let's say that there's a part of your living room where you don't want your toddler child to go. Habibi, don't go over there, please. I don't want you to see that, or I don't want you to touch that, or it's dangerous. Instinctively, what does the child do? It wants to go over there. And this doesn't leave us, even as adults. Even as adults. I'll give you an example. I might be watching TV and I've lost focus for a moment. And then something inappropriate comes on the screen. And then my wife will say to me, Mahdi, don't look for a second. What's my instinctive reaction? To look at the damn screen without even thinking about it. We have this perverse, how can I say, human nature in general has this perversity in that we instinctively want to go towards that which we know we shouldn't, or that which we are being prohibited from. We have an affinity towards it. And there's an ayah in the Quran, I'm going to spend 20 seconds trying to remember it. If I can't remember it, then I can't remember it. I can't remember the ayah. Khair inshallah. Anyway, the point is this. When you tell someone, don't do this, immediately, you make them want to do it more. So, as a general rule, whether it relates to this specific situation, if your sister has brought someone to the family and she says, Mom, Dad, I want to marry this person, and this individual is totally unsuitable, like it's clear cut, he's just not suitable for whatever reason, the worst thing you can do is to say, there's absolutely no way you can do this, you cannot marry him, forget about it. I guarantee you, if you do this, you are simply pushing her into his arms even further. Even further. So, what's the solution here? If this situation presents itself to you, you need to understand, as a brother, as a father, you don't have the leverage, especially in this country, in the West. You do not have the leverage. You are not living in the Arab world, my friend, where you have all the leverage. Nah, you're living here in the West, so you need to be tactful about it. And I had a brother approach me a while ago where he was in a very similar situation. His sister met someone whom she wanted to marry, and the brother was wholly inappropriate for her, for the family, for everyone. I'm not going to go into the reasons why, just accept from what I'm saying that he was totally inappropriate. But they were in love, young, dumb, and in love, and whatever the case may be. And love has no reason. I said to him, don't say anything. Don't tell her outright you can't marry him. Simply say this: you know what, my dear sister, I have a feeling about this. You know that we're not going to accept him, but it's your life. You want to marry him? Marry him. But understand this: if you do marry him, the consequences of you marrying him will be that you will lose your family. We will not want anything to do with you. Because you know, as we, like anyone else does here, you know that this individual is not right for you. He's not a right fit for the family. You know this. But your emotions are clouding your judgment. But if you want to do it, do it. Go, do it. Go and do it. But there will be consequences to that. There is a great power in daring someone to doing something they know they shouldn't do. When you tell them, no, don't do it, they want to do it. But when you tell them, go on and do it, they start to have a fear. They start to like, oh no, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should think twice. There's going to be consequences. My family not going to want to know me. That's how you play it. And lo and behold, that relationship ran its course on its own. No brothers needed to get involved and beat up next man. No dad needed to lose his mind. Nothing. Silence. The relationship ran its course, and she, off of her own accord, pulled the plug on the relationship. She pulled the plug on it. She wanted nothing to do with it anymore. Nobody forced her. So she can't turn around and tell that family, you guys forced me against my will. No. It was her off of her own accord. So remember, gentlemen, brothers who are watching this, fathers who may be watching this, you don't have the leverage when it comes to your daughters. If they found a guy that she wants to marry and you're not happy with him, please understand that. And the more you push for her to leave him or to not continue this relationship with him, the more you are pushing her into his arms, just as Juliet was pushed into the arms of Romeo when her family was so vehemently against them being together. Principle number 1. Now, let's presume that this individual, he might not necessarily be a red flag or whatever the case may be, but you wanna find out more about him. You want to find out more about him. How can you get to find out more? Well, I will say this. Now, what I'm about to share with you is purely anecdotal. It's purely my experience and nothing. I can't prove this to you. But then I'll give you something more solid afterwards. But I want to give you this anecdotal experience first because I've been through it myself personally, and I recently went through it with my own sister. My sister, she got married around 8 months ago now. Alhamdulillah. Okay? And she rang me up one day and she said to me, Mahdi, there's this brother that I want to marry. She continued to describe him to me. And bear in mind, just for context, I never met this guy. I don't know him. I've never met him. I know nothing about him. She started describing him to me. And remember, what I'm about to explain to you is purely anecdotal. I can't prove this to you. As she was talking about him, even though I had never met him, I know nothing about him. And for all I know, my sister could be biased. And yet, I had this feeling that this man is the one for my sister. I can't explain it. I don't know why. It just felt right. Almost as though Allah was facilitating this. And this is another thing I will say to you Muslims watching this now. If you want to marry someone and you see there are obstacles being thrown in the way, endless obstacles, this is an indication from your Lord that this marriage is not meant to be for you. Equally, when you see that the marriage is being facilitated with ease, the families are happy, everyone is encouraging this union, and there's no obstacles in the way, this is an indication from Allah that this is meant to be. Pay attention to those roadblocks or lack thereof. Pay attention to them. And as she was describing him to me, I was like, I don't even need to meet this brother. Somehow, I just know he's the one for my sister. I just knew it. And lo and behold, we met him. My family met him. And we were absolutely right. He was the one. 6 weeks later, they were married. Start to finish, 6 weeks. There or thereabouts. Might have been a bit less, actually. It's the exact same thing that happened to me. 6 weeks, start to finish. When a marriage is meant to be, those two coming together of the souls is meant to be, and there is khair in it, Allah facilitates it with ease. And when it's not meant to be, he puts all of these roadblocks and obstacles in your way as a sort of like, hello, pay attention. Pay attention to the obstacles and the roadblocks. So that's the first thing. If you don't have that feeling, my brother who asked me this question, and you're uncertain about this individual, that doesn't mean he's a write-off. It just means that that he might not necessarily be the best catch going. But it doesn't mean he's a write-off. So now you're going to have to explore further. You can't just shut it down because he had a bad past, like he was lazy in the past. That's not fair. I was lazy once upon a time. Imagine we write off all men because they had they were lazy in the past. So you need to meet him. You need to find out, what is he like now? What's he doing? Basic, simple stuff, bro. What's the family like? What's his father like? What's his mother like? Are the parents still together? What are the sisters like? What's the brother like? And I've mentioned this before. If you want to know how a man or a woman is going to be in a relationship, have a look at their immediate family. He or she came out of that mold. What's the likelihood of him or her being dramatically different from the family is slim. Even if they're reverts, okay, there's a fundamental difference. A revert is obviously a Muslim, whereas his family or her family are still non-Muslim. However, they still came out of that same mold. So their mannerisms, their etiquettes, the cultures, there won't be that. You will have an idea of what that individual will be like in a marriage. There will be an understanding. There will be an understanding. And oftentimes you see, this is why cultures clash. Happens quite often when, for example, when Arabs marry into South Asian families, there often can be a clash. With that being said, my sister just married a Bengali brother. He is Bengali, half Pakistani. So you see, there's always exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, you have to pay attention to cultures because they can clash. Anyway, that's a segue. We don't need to go down that road. So you need to look at the family and see what his family is like. Now, let's say you've done your research. You've looked into the family and you don't like what you see. Dad's a bum, mum's this, sisters are that, brother's a drug dealer. And you're like, you know what? There's too many red flags here. I don't want my sister marrying this guy. What can you do now? Very little. Be careful of your next moves for the reason that I just mentioned at the beginning of this life. If you try to control her with an iron fist and you try to lay the law down on her, there's a high likelihood this girl's going to run away. And she's going to go off into the sunset on her love marriage and commit one of the biggest mistakes of her life. Have a couple of kids from him and then they break up a couple of years down the line. That's typically what happens. Be careful. The more you force her against her will, the more she will actually want to do it. Perversely. Human nature. Fickle. You need to understand how to get the best out of a human. So you sit her down and you say to her, my sister, look, this is my view on you marrying him. I don't have a good feeling about it. For this reason, you roll off the reasons. And this is my recommendation to you. I do not recommend you marry him. And you, furthermore, you don't have our blessing. You don't have our blessing. We don't want to be a part of this. But if you want to do it, that's on you. Nobody's gonna force you against your will. Even though if you need your permission of the wali. You need the permission of the wali to be able to marry this individual. But again, I'm thinking from a perspective of, look at the country that you're living in. You don't have the leverage here. You do not have the leverage, so you need to kind of like be careful how you try to pull the religious strings, because you don't have the law to back you up. So now you need to know how to work human nature, which is exactly the advice that I gave this brother with his sister when he realized that this individual was no good for her. You need to know how to work human nature. And as a general rule, the rule is this: the more you prohibit someone from doing something, the more they want to do it. That's the reason why Jibreel alayhi salam, when he was sent to the hellfire, when Allah sent him to the hellfire, and he saw it surrounded by desires, and he reported back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said, oh Allah, I fear that everyone will enter it, because it's surrounded by so many desires, so many nice things, desires, shahwat, that the nafs, that the soul wants to engage in. And then Allah sent him to paradise. And he saw that paradise was surrounded by all these hardships and trials and tribulations and difficulties. And he reported back to Allah and he said, oh Allah, I fear that nobody will enter it, because it's surrounded by hardship and difficulty. So, understand, the crux of what I'm saying to you is this. Understand, human nature is fickle. The more you try to tell someone not to do something, perversely, the more they want to do it. So if you find yourself in this situation, your sister has found someone she wants to marry, but for whatever reason, he's not suitable for the family. And I'm not saying not suitable doesn't mean he's the wrong caste. Don't get it twisted, guys, yeah? I'm not about that caste business. I mean something serious. My guy's a drug dealer. Something major. Yeah, no, he's a different caste and all this khara. It's not what I'm talking about. Something big. Something significant. Then, you say to her, look, what am I going to do? I can't control you. But this is the situation. You want to do it? Fine, do it. But you don't have our blessing, and you're not going to have anything to do with us. Let her figure it out for herself and allow the relationship to get to the end of the road on its own accord. Because, my friend, you don't have any other choice anyway.